It is 1:30. Let's get started. I want to thank everyone for setting some time aside to visit with us for your Smart Manager webinar. This, of course, is brought to you by Uliance, where we are celebrating over 25 years of enhancing people and improving business. And today is sort of exciting for us. We broke the record today. It's standing room only. We're at full capacity for this webinar. So I want to thank everyone for spreading the word and showing up. I think that also means people are very interested in learning how to manage stress for your team, and with good reason. We know that stress is contagious. It can spread easily from one person to the next, one department to the next. It sneaks into our cars. We take it home with us. And left unchecked, it can cost a business some real serious money with turnover and loss of productivity. In fact, we want to ask you about that in a moment. But to help us understand this and come up with some good solutions for managing stress, we are inviting back to the table Darren Miller. Darren is manager of clinical services here at Uliance. He has over 18 years of clinical experience, and he's a super chill kind of guy. In fact, I usually see you with a smile on your face, and I appreciate that. Good afternoon, Darren. Thanks for being here.
Hi, Matt. Thanks for having me.
So can you help us understand how come you chose this quote here from Maureen, what is that, Killoran?
Mm-hmm. And it really just strikes with me because I believe that stress really is something that it's not something that happens to us. It's our response to what happens. Response is something we can choose, which indicates that we have choice in what we do going forward and how we handle that, not just for ourselves, but also for the teams of the people that we work with every day.
I like that. And it requires some deliberate action. We're not going to fall into a stress-free environment. We have to create it. We know that from the APA, the American Psychological Association, 69% of the people feel that stress is getting in their way. But you don't need a study to figure that out. Just ask the people that you're working with. Hey, I want to remind everyone, by the way, as we get started, if you have questions, and I see that most of you have figured this out already, if you have questions or comments, you can just type them into that dialog box. We'll be happy to answer them for you. And let's define stress as we get started. And one of the things I wanted to do was to launch this poll to see how it is impacting your business, your team. So take a look there. I'll explain to you real quick. The last one, poor work-life balance. What are we talking about there? That is when people come in early, stay late. They're coming in on Saturdays because of the stress. I think with this particular poll, you can pick multiple answers. So we'll see which ones are impacting you the most. How about you, Darren? Do you have an idea for your own team? When the going gets tough, what it usually is? Deadlines? What is it?
Well, some of the things, obviously here, it could be that we're dealing with some of the clients that are struggling with issues in their lives. And so helping people, oftentimes what we do is we forget to help ourselves. We forget to take care of ourselves. We're in a service industry where if you don't take care of yourselves, you run the risk of burning out. And I think in this industry for us and for my team in particular, if we don't do those self-care things, if we don't take care of ourselves and have that really good work-life balance that we talk about, you really run the risk of not being effective when it comes to helping others.
And as we're closing this poll now, I see that the #1 response is poor work-life balance. This is how it's showing up in our teams, followed by just not having a sense of humor, followed by a lower quality of work. Now, Darren, can you give us the behind the scenes, the clinical explanation of what is stress, what's going on? I'm sure we've all heard of the fight or flight phenomenon. How does that apply in this situation?
Well, that happens where there is the fight or flight, where people are feeling very stressed, and so they can either internalize it, and oftentimes what happens when that occurs is they shut down. They may have difficulty coming into work every day. They may have difficulty focusing on the job. They may have difficulty performing just the basic tasks of what are required of them every day. And that can really shut down a team very quickly. As you can imagine, it really does impact when one person stops carrying their weight or stops doing what it is the team needs for them to do. It can really impact everyone.
By the way, I'm putting up there on the screen, you can see the outcome of your poll there, just like we were talking about. Right, and I like what you said, Darren. The other thing I'd like to point out is that it is toxic. And if it goes untreated, it is going to degrade your quality of life. So we can take deliberate steps to do something about this. Now, let's talk about how it actually shows up in the workplace. These are some of the things that we've mentioned earlier, but can you expand on some of this, Darren?
Well, some of the easiest to recognize certainly would be just the attendance. People not showing up to work, they're calling in frequently to the point where they're either leaving the team short. You as a manager having some difficulty even just filling the holes in your staffing to make sure that people are on site. That's usually one of the easiest things to recognize. But also when it comes to making mistakes in their work, what we see is that people will tend to make some poor decisions, maybe some impulsive decisions, or not think through the consequences of what it is that they're doing. All of those things can be indicators that they're feeling this sense of stress that's going on in their life right now. And certainly when we talk about from a standpoint that we deal with every day is the emotional impact and the irritability, things like that show up with individuals on our teams that when they come in. And obviously that has an impact, not just on us as leaders, but on the whole team. It just takes one person that's coming in with an attitude like that can really impact the whole team and make it a struggle for everybody in their daily work.
I have absolutely seen that to be true. One person who is just over-energized can make the whole team start buzzing. And what about some of these more common office stressors? So we're starting off here. We want to understand what stress is, what it looks like. We want to understand where it's coming from. So when we start to devise some strategies, we'll know where to target. What can you say about some of these common office stressors, Darren?
Well, the workload that people have is typically what they will attribute most of their stress load to in a job setting. And certainly there's some fact to that people coming in feeling that they're overloaded, feeling like they're overwhelmed. Maybe it's a deadline that's coming up that they just know they're not going to be able to hit. Instead of being able to communicate that back to the leader, they just internalize it. And that's where that stress really takes over and impacts their ability in their job and also their ability to work as a team member.
And we're getting a question coming. The people want to know if we'll be providing the slide deck. And I'm sorry, no, we don't provide that, but you can download an outline if you are interested in taking notes. And we'll, again, be happy to answer any other questions that you have. Some other common office stressors we want to consider is poorly managed change. Now, change happens every day. That's the one thing that we can't help. But what does that mean, the poorly managed? What are we talking about?
Well, when change occurs and we're not prepared for it, we can all have some ownership in that we really want to prepare our teams and make sure that they're able to handle change when it comes up. It's inevitable. Life changes. Things happen in business that change our jobs every day. So making sure that we're adapting to that and making sure that we take care of each other when those things happen. We can't anticipate everything. We can't anticipate all the changes that are going to happen. But we can, again, control our behavior and our reaction to those things. And that kind of goes back to our quote that we began with, that we can't control the events, but we can control what our reaction is to those stressors. And that's where we can really make an impact as a leader.
Your quote's starting to make more sense now. All right. Thank you for that. One last big common office stressor we wanted to mention and have a slide all to itself is this idea of stress carried over from home. We'd like to think that people leave that at the door, but we know the truth that it bleeds into the team. It bleeds into your Monday morning. What can you do about that?
Right. And office stressors certainly are one part of what cause stress, but the other things are things that most commonly people are bringing in from home. Again, we don't exist in a vacuum. We talk about work-life balance, but the other part of work-life balance is the life that happens outside of work. And certainly people that may carry in things from health issues to relationship issues, family issues, grief and loss, things that people are experiencing. Sometimes the lack of sleep. We have, new mothers that are on our team that have struggled with having a baby, or maybe there's a little postpartum depression that might be there.
That's right.
All of those issues that kind of bring with it a stress level that really don't have much to do with the work environment, but are going to impact the work environment. And certainly they impact our teams.
Pays to be a mindful leader so that we're thinking about all these different variables. We want to start coming up with some solutions for managing your team. Now, I know here at Uliance, we favor a two-prong approach when it comes to managing stress for your team. Can you tell us a little bit about what these two different levels are?
Sure. The two things that we really look at is managing the overall stress on a daily basis, and again, that's that self-care that we preach, not just to the people that we service every day, but also to the staff that are here. We know it's important to have that balance. We know it's important that people are managing their stress so that they're effective in their jobs. Again, and especially for us in a service environment where our job is to take care of people. If you don't take good care of yourself, it's very difficult to be there to take care of others. And the second part of that is developing a spot treatment. And what we really mean by that spot treatment is something that doesn't wait. It's something that happens immediately. If I can give you an example of that, if you spilled spaghetti sauce on your carpet,
Right.
you're not just going to walk over it for 3 days and then come back and try to treat it and not come back and then try to clean up the carpet. You're going to literally get out your carpet cleaner. You're going to get out your spot treatment, and you're going to literally do it right then to take that out, to make sure that stain doesn't set in and it doesn't wreck the carpet. And that's really what we're talking about here too, is making sure that when stress happens, and inevitably it will on your teams, that we react quickly to that in a healthy way.
So I've just thought of this based on your example. We'll call this what the carpet strategy, where you vacuum every day, but once in a while you have to have that spot treatment, that ability to go in there and have a focused intervention. So let's talk about some of these focused interventions, those things that we actually have control over, that we can do something about as a manager, supervisor, as a member of the HR team.
Mm-hmm. Some of those preemptive measures, things that we want to make sure that we're doing actively, making sure that expectations for our team are clear. Make sure that they're on the same page with you as a leader. Communication in any relationship is imperative, especially in a working one. If you don't have good communication, it's going to lead to problems. In a marriage outside of work, those things can lead to issues where people stop communicating. But that same type of communication really does apply internally when we're dealing with our team members, making sure that we're telling them what those expectations are, and backing those things up. Some of the other things that we might have on the slide here are, updating our policies, making sure.
Huge fan of that one.
Yeah, that we're procedurally right. Again, it gives you something to kind of fall back on, that this isn't a personal thing, but I do need to hold team members accountable to policies and procedures. And then, some of the stressors that we deal with are things that like managing schedules, making sure that people are there, and how do we fairly apply that. Vacation times, as we come up on the summer months, making sure that those things are communicated, that the team is aware of when staff is going to be off, when they're not going to be there, and how those, again, policies for scheduling vacation times are applied across the board, so nobody feels that they're being unfairly treated.
Right, because wouldn't that be something if the very thing that you're trying to do, go on vacation to relax, actually causes stress? So here's a good example of how a manager can have a positive impact on that. This last bullet point here too, decluttering, there's a lot of research that we have available to us that demonstrates even cleaning up one's desk can have a positive impact on their stress level. Something not to overlook. When you don't do it, it's sort of like a little sticky note that's screaming at you, take care of me, take care of me. And you get enough of those, it's going to distract you. What is this idea about setting a tone for a leader? What can you actually do? What does that look like? What could someone listening to this podcast today start? What could they do today to show that they're setting a tone?
Sure. And I think the first part, and most importantly, we want to demonstrate the type of behaviors that you're asking of your team. Make sure that you're doing those things. Again, when we talk about self-care, make sure as a leader that you're taking care of yourself. Make sure you're being that role model to people, that you're coming in, that you're able to handle your stress so that you don't fall into that trap of becoming irritable or short with your team. Making sure that we're doing those things to be healthy, taking care of those things outside of work as well.
Yeah, I'm thinking like not working through your lunch. Go to the staff room and eat with the employees and show them how
Absolutely.
you do it.
Right.
What about now this idea of being fair and reasonable? You mentioned a little bit of this when it came to scheduling. And that makes good sense. Yeah. When somebody has confidence in their leader that they will be fair and reasonable, that will help decrease the stress. What can you say about that?
Well, I would say also, I think healthy and fair leaders also look at their own policies. There are times where people might complain about something, and I think we have to have the ability to step back and go, okay, am I being fair? Am I applying this policy reasonably? Am I interpreting this correctly? Maybe even bouncing it off another leader. One of the things that we talk about a lot is making sure that we have support from our staff that we rely on, not just other leaders, but people that you trust, and that could also, maybe an HR person that can also explain a policy and make sure that you're applying it fairly.
By the way, when we're done, I want to remind everybody that we'll be sending you a infographic on, I think it's called 3 Surprising Ways That You Can Boost Your Mood, in case you're feeling a little stressed yourself. What about this idea? And this is probably one of my favorites, being flexible where possible. I've worked with some rigid people. I've worked with some very flexible people. And I can tell you the flexible leader is more likely to bring me to a calm space. What can you say? What are some good ideas? How does one be flexible?
Well, again, and a lot of this does depend on the work environment that you have. Some of these ideas may not apply for everybody, but sometimes having things where you're able to work remotely from home. We recognize that some people on our teams and some individuals that we work with closely have struggles where they may not be able to come in. I've had instances on teams that I've had, both past and present, where people had childcare issues, and where I was able to do that and trying to be as flexible as I can and allowing them to do some work from home. That was certainly appropriate for them to be able to do that. Now, not every company has policies in place that allow that to happen. But again, when we talk about being flexible, those are some of the things to do. And just creating that environment where people feel comfortable, where you're listening to some of the things that they're looking for. Ways to dress down.
Right. And things maybe you don't have control over. Maybe we can't bring our dogs into work, but boy, if you can, that would be great. Hey, we have a question too I wanted to address. Somebody was asking on the previous slide. Let's take a look. Previous slide, somebody was talking about the stress creators. And can you elaborate on how you interrupt the stress creators? That would be, in my mind, those are people that we can predict. Those are the people who are high energy and they're dropping papers as they're getting the whole team on edge. I would say that we would want to be preemptive and intervene.
And I think that's the key, is making sure that you do it as soon as possible. If you're able to identify where that stress is coming from, we talked earlier about really healthy communication. As in any management style, you really need to have that with your teams. And so being able to go to somebody, address that head on, and have that kind of relationship where you're able to say to them, we've built this trust, but something's going on with you right now, and we need to address this. We need to address this so that it doesn't start to impact the rest of the team.
Darren, what do you make out of this idea of making a list and checking it twice? What's the bottom line here?
Well, I think having a plan a lot of this has to do with staffing and making sure that things are covered as well. But make sure that those plans that we have in place, when our teams are looking to us to basically hold things together, and making sure that we don't let them down and fall apart. So really making sure that we're taking care of the things that we need to take care of. So that they have confidence when they have a concern that they bring to us, that we're going to address it with the same vigor, with the same ability to problem solve that they're expecting out of the rest of our workload.
We know another way that leaders can be help when we want to de-stress our team is to be a support for them. And that means more than just listening. That's the very first bullet point up there, because it's the most important one. But what else goes into that, would you say?
Well, being as flexible as you can. I was able to identify with a team member in the past, someone that was struggling to come in at 8 o'clock in the morning. One of the things that we looked at is would starting at 8:30 help? There were some family obligations that happened that were making it very difficult for her to be here at 8 o'clock in the morning. And a simple change to the schedule which again didn't impact the rest of the team, but allowed for us to be flexible with her, really put her in a better position. And it really helped with her timeliness and making sure that she was able to get to work on time, not have the tardiness that was part of that. And a lot of that just came back to being flexible and making sure that I was listening to what her concern was and then addressing that as best I could.
Well, it sounds too like you invited this person into the problem solving process, which I think is smart. Now, so we want to be a support. We also want to provide support. And Darren, if I may, there's one thing on here, that second bullet point down. I don't know if people know about this, but there is a company, and maybe you have a budget for this, maybe you don't, but just so you know, another alternative, there's a company called Meditation Works, and they bring right to your site, what is it? It's like a giant trailer, and inside it is it's a studio for relaxation, for meditation, and that's an option. We've participated in that before. I remember somebody nicknamed it the Den of Zen. Have you heard that one?
I have. Yes.
That's pretty clever. What are some of these other? Of course, we're going to tell you about providing the EAP as a means of making sure that people can balance their work-life balance better. What would you like to say about this?
Well, it's literally why we exist here at Uliance. We really believe in helping people in the workplace that are struggling with issues. Again, we know that work does not happen in a bubble. Life happens, and again, we want to be a support to people that are looking for that work-life balance, that are looking to try to handle those stressors and make sure that we're helping them through it effectively. That's why the EAP is there. For sometimes when leaders are struggling to help someone find the answers, they need that little bit more of a professional person that can step in and really try to provide that level of intervention that might be even a little bit more help to those team members that are struggling with issues that they're bringing to work every day.
You know what else I like about that whole idea is when I'm talking to employees, I'll say, don't forget your EAP, and we can do some of this stuff while you're working. Can they look up the book themselves and find out what's a good resource for caring for their elder parent or something that's stressing them out? Of course they can. We'll do it for you while you're at work. I love that concept because hopefully that's going to take a little edge off. Now, this slide about boosting morale, I love this idea where we're going to bend the rules a little bit. We know through research that human beings do best with predictable consistency with occasional surprises. And I would suggest bending the rules, that's something that we just do sparingly, and that's one of those surprises that pop up. What do you think about that idea?
Well, it's one of those things you have to walk in and tread carefully on, right? Obviously, if there's a culture of that, yes, we're going to make accommodations and be as helpful as we can, I think that allows for people to feel comfortable. I think it allows for your team members to come to you more readily. But there's also times where those rules can't be bent. That you may have a company policy. For instance, we talked earlier about working from home. You may have a company policy that says very clearly that no one can work from home. And it's important to follow those policies as closely as they have to be. And there may be no room for any gray shades in there at all. It's just black and white that this is either yes, you can or no, you can't. But as much as we can, being able to be flexible with our team members, making sure that, again, if there's something that they need or they need to feel connected to the job, to have that work-life balance and that feeling of comfort when they come in every day, that's there for them.
So as I'm listening to you today, Darren, I'm starting to realize there is no one thing that's going to solve it. We probably have to be looking at a combination, and it's layer upon layer of effort in order to make a difference on your team.
There's a great book that's out there. It's called First Break All the Rules. And one of the things that it talks about is making sure that that individuals are treated differently because everyone is different. There is no set. What one person that's listening today might have on their team, another person may have an entirely different experience with their team going on. And so those struggles, they're real for every single person that's listening. And it's about making sure that we as team leaders get in, dig around, and find out what it is that we can best do to impact our team to make them healthy and give them the support that they need. And again, that's where an EAP comes in, so that we can actually be part of that solution for you in helping people come up with those solutions.
So, Darren, you were talking about we want to be a role model. We want to show the employees that we practice what we preach.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that is taking care of our self-care. Before we move forward, I want to thank our audience in advance, because right after this webinar, you will be receiving a survey. And if you could just give us 30 more seconds of your time, we sure would appreciate your input. All these great ideas that we have for these webinars come from you. We very much appreciate your ideas, your suggestions, and we look forward to reading your feedback. Darren, this idea about self-care, this is for the managers, leaders, this is for our direct reports. What goes into this? Here's a couple of ideas. What could you say about this?
Well, you need to take care of yourself, just like we would prioritize taking care of others. Again, in helping professions, one of the very first things you learn is that if you don't have anything kind of in the bank to offer to somebody else, you're not going to be any help to anyone else. You have to take care of yourself. You have to make sure that that means your health, your mental health, and your physical health are both taken care of when you walk in every day, because otherwise it's going to impact your team. And they will sense that from you. So making sure that you're in a good place with your health, making sure that when you walk in that you're taking care of it, you're getting plenty of sleep, you're getting plenty of exercise. We know those things are very important. But also from a mental health standpoint, making sure that we take care of and manage our stress effectively is every bit as important as our physical health.
And I would suggest to you, sleep is the #1 bullet point on there, because it is the most important. You could have all of those other things all high grades, but if you're not getting adequate sleep, it's not going to much matter. And if I can real quick, just mention play, because usually that confuses people. And we have that up there because we are suggesting that that is part of self-care. Play is not just for kittens and little kids. Play is how we learn new ideas. This is where we try out new ideas. This is where we practice our socialization in an environment that is free from fear of being in trouble or criticism. So it's very important that we continue to practice this.
And unfortunately, it's one of the very first things that gets cut out. We all have so many priorities in our life, so many things that we feel like we have to do, that we forget to do those things that we really enjoy to do. And again, when it comes to managing our own stress so that we can be there to help our teams manage theirs, making sure that you're in a good place and that you're having some of that joy and that enjoyment that you in activities that you really find to be stimulating, find to be fun in your life, and satisfaction, and getting some satisfaction out of your life is really, really important.
Darren, we have a question coming in, and somebody wanted to know the name of the book again, which was Break All the Rules.
First Break All the Rules.
First Break All the Rules by Marcus Buckingham.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
People of did the Gallup polls.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And I've read that book too. I very much like it. I like the idea that we throw out the cookie cutters, that we manage to the individual.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So before we wrap up today, I wonder if there was a thought or an idea that you would like to impart to our audience, or something to highlight.
I think one of the things that I really like for everybody to take away from this is that make sure that you're taking care of yourself. Do those things that are going to put you in a great place to be that leader, to model that for your team, and then communicate with your team. One of the biggest stressors that we find, and one of the things that when people call us that are talking about their job stress being the #1 stressor they're dealing with right now, oftentimes comes back to poor communication with their manager, not feeling like they're being heard, not feeling like they're being listened to. And so as leaders, hearing those things and making sure that we're trying to impact some change, making sure that we're recognizing that we can all be better in what we do, and making sure that we are listening to our team.
You know, listening to you, I had this idea, and I don't know what I think about it. Do you have an opinion about this? I have worked with families before, and I have long maintained that when you see an anxious child, almost always there's an anxious adult in the household. Now, would you say this is true then? If that's true, if you have an anxious team, that means there's an anxious leader?
It could be.
Could be.
Again, not everything is controlled by the job environment.
Of course, yeah.
We kind of acknowledged earlier, there's a lot of things that come in from outside. And certainly those are things that we can't really impact. All we can do is impact our reaction to those things, and really try to figure out how we're going to best resolve those issues or be part of the solution for those. But certainly we do set the tone for our teams. And so you do have to be careful with how you come in and what your approach is to everyone. The more calm that you can present, that is going to impact the overall general focus of your team every day.
Wise words. And I want to thank you for being here again, Darren. You provide excellent information. You're a great source to talk to, and you are pretty chill. I'm feeling it already. Thank you for that.
Thanks, Matt. Now, our philosophy here is that we want to help people, and I hope this has helped today. So thank you very much for allowing me to come in and be part of your day.
And we want to remind our audience that our next Smart Manager webinar will be on Tuesday, the 27th, and it is creating a productive work environment, another situation in which managers, leaders, supervisors, HR can demonstrate their value to their company by the actions that they take by creating a productive work environment. Thank you for your time today. And I want to, we have one last question. Somebody wanted to know where you can download the outline that should still be available as long as this webinar is going, and it should be in your, it is under a box called Materials. Let's take a look. And if you click on that button, it's called Notes for Managing Stress, and that should be available to you. I want to thank everyone, and we will see you next time for your next Smart Manager webinar.